Hello, and welcome back to the Utah Tech Leads Leadership Series. Today, we are joined by Rhett. How are you doing today?
Hey Liz, how are you? Doing
I'm
well.
great. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you work for and what you do.
Yeah, so my official title is Vice President of FP&A. I work at Degreed. So I don't think we can even call us a startup anymore. We're very we're getting past the startup, kind of pre-IPO stage, I would call us. It's a great company. We focus on continuing. We sell a continuing education platform for enterprise companies. We manage learning stipends. We're in the ed tech space is the industry. So it's really fun. Our office is here in Draper, Utah. We got about 500 employees. It's awesome. So yeah, I do the finance side. I do a lot of forecasting, budget management, long range planning, strategic planning, all the fun stuff that comes with corporate finance.
Have you always been in ed tech or did you come from somewhere else?
No, so my background, yeah, I've been a little bit all over the place. I used to work for a few bigger companies, tech companies. I worked for Cisco Systems, the big networking company. I worked for Adobe as well. That's basically those two companies over the last 10, 11 years before I was at Degreed. Before that, I was not in tech. I was in real estate. So I helped cause the great real estate crash in 2008. I was in that space.
Thanks for that. We all
Yeah, you're
appreciate your
welcome.
work on
It,
that.
it hurt me, just so everyone knows, like it hurt me as well. um, but yeah, but I've always had tech in my heart. I mean, even during my undergrad college days over 20, 25 years ago, I was building websites. This is early as like 99, 2000. I was hard coding HTML, CSS. I always had that tech affinity. Thought I was going to be the next, well, at the time, like the next Bill Gates. But yeah, I've always had that tech affinity. I just got sidetracked for a while and tried to do some real estate stuff.
Yeah, you found your way back. You made it. It's
I
all right.
did.
So, because you've industry hopped a little bit, you've kind of seen leadership in both sides of those industries. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you have found to be the most helpful, either for you personally or for your team?
Yeah, from a leadership perspective, I've always appreciated the leaders who are great mentors, who are willing to take that extra time to have those learning moments with you. And it's learning moment is it's not like a weekly check-in or monthly one-on-one or something. It's like, let's talk about development. It's one of those critical points happen in business where it's strategic, it can be tactical in your day-to-day work. It can be in a group setting where they pull you aside after and explain, hey, did you understand what's going on there? Maybe it's something personal you did. I think back to an incident I had at Cisco early on. We had a supply chain disruption, and it was, and I was in a big meeting, and very senior leaders were talking, and then afterwards, it wasn't even my manager; it was like my vice president. He pulled me aside and said, "Hey, did you understand what's going on there?" And we talked about the financial principle around it, and I really appreciated that and took that to heart. And I've always found those leaders that are willing to take the extra moments for more junior, early career employees. It was very nice. And now, now I'm a little more senior, lost a little bit of hair and gained some grays, that like I'm on the other side where I'm trying to give those out, right? So I'm trying to be the leader and trying to help people understand what is really going on in the market. Recently, you and I have chatted recently about the Silicon Valley Bank fiasco that it was. And yeah, luckily, our company was not impacted, but I did have a lot of friends with different companies who were impacted. And they reached out to me and they called me and said, "Hey, I know like you work in finance. What does this mean? What should I do? Can you educate me?" Fortunately, there's not a lot of those disasters that happen from our corporate finance angle very often, but I was glad to help. And it was something where I was glad I was able to provide my expertise to those who could use it. So, and I really found that you give more than you get. Yeah, I was helping them out that day, but they'll help me out another day. And in the end of the day, I'll be better off for it. So, yeah.
It definitely seems like mentorship has meant a lot, whether it was formal or informal. Do you kind of experience that in the community now in the position that you're in?
I do. So I actually moved to the Bay Area, California for a few years. I moved back to Utah. It's been about 5 years ago now. And, the mentorship I received, not just from, my current company Degree, but also just from the community, got a couple of different friends that work in the tech industry, a couple of different group chats where we chat with each other about different things going on, and having that back and forth with people who have been there before. It's really strengthened, I would say, the Utah community. If I'm going to be completely blunt, when I got my MBA about 11 years ago now, And when I graduated, I went to the Mary School in Provo, and I graduated. I actually looked around Utah and I was like, Utah's great, but is there something in the tech field that I could really work at? And, there was a few. Adobe was already here, and Domo was on its way up, and there was a few other companies, but I didn't really feel like there was that many options. When I moved back, I was blown away by the number of legitimate, highly skilled, talented people driving real innovation, real change. And I was like, this is awesome. And I've been fortunate enough to connect with some. I had lunch with a friend of mine yesterday, and we were talking about some sticky work situations. And he's not in finance; it was just other stuff. And it was, he's got a startup, and we were talking about some stuff he was working on. I was talking about stuff I deal with work, and it was really kind of that good give and take community aspect. He even suggested someone else I could reach out into the community and just have that conversation. And honestly, like Utah to me is, it's home. I grew up here, and I'm glad to be back. And I'm glad to see that in the tech world, we have this nice community that's burgeoning, that's just growing up and being awesome. As we had a Utah Tech Week this last January, and that was the first time it was kind of done. It was informal, but man, was it cool. The community there, I was able to participate in events. I can't believe there was a niche event for a finance person. It was like, it was literally like, finance companies that are out of that early stage mode and are now gaining traction, and, what do you do next in this environment? And it was an awesome event hosted by some incredible people. So yeah, the community is awesome. I love the community. It's great.
And Utah Tech Week was especially heartening. There were hundreds of events, and it was just kind of a sign up and do something. And clearly the community wants to be engaged with one another and with the greater state as a whole. It's pretty awesome. So you've worked at a lot of large companies, which is awesome and kind of spectacular when it comes to the tech scene in Utah. Most people start out in those teensy tiny little startups. But with that many employees and with a rather large team yourself, how do you keep up to date with all of the information that you need to have on your own job, but also on the community, or tips and tricks to help your own team?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say, it doesn't matter if you work for a large company, small company, startup, like education. I do work for an education company, full disclosure, but education is critical. How do you stay up to date on what's going on? The great thing is we now have the internet and the internet has all this awesome things. The downside is, how do you curate that? How do you find what you're looking for? And I'm one of those, I don't even want to say avid. I'm almost like a insane person when it comes to learning about new things. Like, I listen to all the podcasts, I read all the blogs. Like, I subscribe to probably over 100 different blogs, Substacks. I try to follow people on Twitter. I've actually, don't laugh, I found value in LinkedIn and my LinkedIn feed. I found people, I didn't connect with them, I just follow them. And even as niches in industry as SaaS finance, I have found some experts who are willingly giving their advice, expertise. They're putting it out on a Substack or their own personal blog. They're publishing regularly. I've DM'd them. I've slid into their DMs, so to speak, as I could say. And I've said, hey, I have this question. I talked to a guy, he was talking about hiring and how you differentiate between hiring like a VP level versus a director level. And we went back and forth and talked about strategies. It was super cool. Not to totally sell our platform, but our platform does have learning pathways where internally we use those to share articles, YouTube videos, links. We can write our own posts. We share all that internally, and it's great. Externally, we try to connect with, whether it's you get a group chat going along the same lines. I like to share stuff all the time. I'll share clips from podcasts and say, hey, just listen to this 2-minute clip, or it starts here. And I found once I share, people start sharing back, which is great. And then I also think the in-person matters as well. And you don't have to let's jump on a Zoom call and talk about it, but you can have those hey, let's just grab dinner. And then all of a sudden you start talking shop, you start talking work, and you're like, hey, did you hear about this podcast? Or, hey, this blog is really good, or whatever. And, even if the blog's not produced from someone in your community, you can have discussions around it. And I found that's awesome. There was one this week about valuations where we sent it out. I sent it out to a few people here in Utah, and we were talking about what that valuations means specifically to the Utah scene, what we should prepare for, fundraising. We had that whole conversation all because of a blog post that I discovered. So you don't have to read I don't read all 100 Substacks. I subscribe to them, and that becomes kind of a news feed that I can go pick out the good stuff that I like. So that's how I do it.
Well, that leads to my next question kind of perfectly. How do you balance your work versus your personal life?
Yeah, that's the fun part, right? Our office, we are a remote friendly company. I go in 2, 3 days a week, work from home the other 2 days. I do have little kids, so how do you balance those? They've been pretty good. They know during the day that, kind of 8 to 5 that they can't bug me. They start getting a little antsy around dinner time, like, Dad, get out of your office. Um, Balancing, I would say what you learn. Sometimes I'll block off, I don't sometimes, I do block off calendar sections of my own for just literally, I'll call it like personal growth or learning or something. I'll actually add that into my calendar. Don't bug me, don't schedule on this. And I very rarely will actually impede upon it. Usually it is what it is. I'll turn off Slack, put my phone away, and I'll go through and just say, okay, what's important here? I also like to spend time late at night. So after the kids go to bed, I am kind of a night owl. I know other friends, they do it early in the morning. Well, they get up early, but you just got to look for those hours to where you can stay up to date on what's going on. Because it does change super rapid. I mean, if you want to talk SaaS valuations, in the last 18 months, I mean, they change almost monthly. What does that mean for fundraising? What does that mean for, how you do everything from pricing your stock options to raising money to just keeping morale and, hey, what's going on? And even customers, understanding what the customer spend might be. If you're trying to acquire new customers, what their budgets might look like. It's super important. So, yeah.
So you talked a lot about community as well. So why do you think community engagement and kind of things like the Utah Tech Week are so important?
It's You can only do so much virtually. When COVID hit, we all went virtual. We're like, hey, it's all great. We have all these virtual tools. We can still working, but there's something about that face-to-face interaction. One of my favorite tech blogs and podcasts, they talk about touch the grass. They say get out and have a touch the grass movement, or get out and actually touch the grass. At Degreed, oftentimes we'll do a service project as a company. So it's like, get out of the office, go, volunteer, at the soup kitchen or for Tabitha's Way or the food pantry or whatever it is, and build those connections. Not only giving back, but you actually build the connections. I mean, I work in finance. Stuff like that gives me an opportunity to connect with a product manager or someone in marketing, and get you out of your close sphere, right? Your close circle. I also think it helps with, doing activities like that helps with like Utah Tech Week. It broadens your network, and in a good way, where you can draw upon or you can provide value to people you would talk to on a regular basis. I mean, how do you know what's really going on unless you get to meet other people, right? You can do that virtually, which is great. I love the virtual world. I probably too much, but the physical world, there's something to be said by sitting in the same room, breaking bread, and developing that connection, that relationship of trust you can have with someone. So yes, yeah,
For
totally.
sure. Yeah. I definitely remember, and this kind of leads into my next question of why you chose to support UTL. And I hope this isn't the reason, but I do remember the first time I actually met you in person and called you a Valley boy. And you found out that Sunny Washington and you shared the same birthday, but then you were like, that's interesting to Sunny, but why did you call me a Valley boy? I think you said no one outside of the Valley calls anyone a Valley boy. And yeah, I just died. It was one of my favorite stories to tell for quite some time now, I think. Yeah. So talk to us. That person to person interaction is definitely important. But why did you choose to support UTL?
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It is developing that connection with people in the community and acting change. And I mean, to be clear, we talk Valley Boy. It's not Salt Lake Valley. It's not Utah Valley. It's Ogden Valley, which is not in Ogden. So it's like,
Yeah.
you basically have to be from Ogden Valley to know what a Valley Boy is, which was amazing. And like honestly, like when I first met you, Elizabeth, that was like our first connection. And since then, I'd consider you a friend. Like,
Yep.
but and I may have even followed you on Twitter or LinkedIn, or we emailed before, but like until you develop that connection and you have a good laugh together, how do you then, build that connection in order to enact change? And that's what Utah Tech Leads does to me, is like, it's this nice group to where, okay, what can we tactically, logistically do to enact change? Like, what will actually move the needle? Like, we can philosophize all day and talk about, oh, it'd be nice if this and that, but how do we actually do it? It's like, well, hey, here's some tangible ways we can actually do it. And that's what I've seen through Utah Tech Leads, is like, hey, this is what matters. And, interaction, and whether it's political or in the community, or, the larger tech community abroad, it's great to have that. Go back to that Silicon Valley Bank example. Utah Tech Leads was all over it. And it was like, how can we have a meeting? How can we provide support to our community? Like, that was great. And it was like, oh, there's someone I can call that's in the same boat that I could, even if it's commiserate over drinks after hours, like, who can I connect with? And it's just a great value to have. It's awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts today and for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate you.